The only good thing I can say about today is that the Mets don't play baseball.
Thank God.
日本時間4月21日は移動日でメッツの試合がなく、公園オーナーは同じニューヨークに拠点を置くニックスの試合を観戦。しかしニックスはチームのポストシーズン史上タイ記録となる最終クォーターで12点差を逆転される痛い敗戦を喫してしまい、 SNS 上では怒りの矛先を公園オーナーに向けるニューヨーカーが数多く見られる事態となった。昨日までの動画では不振のリンドーア選手やメンドーサ監督が現場の責任を問う声を紹介してきたが、指揮者の間ではさらに上、編成部長のスターンズ GM や公園オーナーも含めたフロントの問題だという見方も強まってきており、この動画ではそれらを中心に現地の反応をお届けしていく。
When are we going to start talking about the David Stearns problem? Because to me, that's actually the root of the issue. Yes, Carlos Mendoza's the motivator. He's out there on the front lines. And honestly, he'll probably end up being the one taking the fall for it.
Definitely.
But probably have a little bit of a longer leash because David Stearns hired him. But when do we start talking about David Stearns' roster construction? Because we've sat here, we've talked about the crafty, the creativity. Oh, he gets creative. I'm done. I've had enough. You blew up the core this offseason for this greater vision that you had of a defensive team, a team that hits to contact, a team that has a deep lineup, and that has so far completely failed. When are we going to start talking about David Stearns and his lack of success? Because 2024, as I've said many times, the year they went to the NLCS, he largely inherited that team. So 2025 and the first month of 2026, David Stearns' New York Mets teams have not gone so well.
It always seemed like David Stearns had like this weird obsession with money, like this weird obsession with getting the best deal. You know what I mean?
It stems from Milwaukee. We can be honest about something.
He's the kind of person who refuses to buy something full price. He's waiting until he sees it on the Marshall's rack. Let me be clear. I am also that person. Like, I really do get it, and I love a good steal. Marshalls has a lot of great Calvin Klein stuff that you otherwise would not find for that price.
Correct.
But at times, you buy that dress and it turns out there's a rip in it.
You can't shop at the TJ Maxx when you live in Manhattan in a penthouse like David Stearns does.
That's the problem. It kind of feels like Mendoza was put a little bit in a hole that he didn't really actually dig, and now he's trying to crawl his way out of, you know? Like, to your point, they blew up the core, and I'm not going to sit here and say that there's no reason why they did that, because we're the same people who, you know, we're sitting here at the end of last season like something drastic needs to change here. And something drastic did change, but it was a high risk, high reward change. And right now, I think we're seeing the high risk portion of that.
And we can be honest about something. With what happened last year, I'm not really sure David Stearns was in a position to put himself and Carlos Mendoza in a high-risk situation.
And they can turn this around and go to the postseason. But if you're going to place blame right now, it's got to go on the players, and it's got to go on the GM. I don't think it lands at Carlos Mendoza's feet in the moment right now. You talked about
because he's not responsible for the roster
Well, you talked about, yes, the roster makeup. You talk about run prevention. Okay, well, you put a bunch of guys out of position. Pete Alonso, whether you want to admit it or not, Brandon Nimmo, whether you want to admit it or not, and you can go another way, regardless of what they're doing with their other teams right now. Those guys showed up, posted every day. You knew exactly what you were getting. Pete was better defensively than you gave him credit for. The fans loved him. He loved them. All of that being said, you replaced him with Jorge Polanco, who's had injury history, and now we're trying to make Mark Vientos and Brett Beatty play first base. Bo Bichette moves out of position. We bring up Carson Benj. We try and work him into the fold. And then what happens? Soto gets hurt and Lindor gets off to one of the worst starts of his career and has mental lapses. When your offense is not scoring, everything looks flat. They're scoring 1.7 runs per game in these last 11 games.
Right.
You can't win in the big leagues that way.
Listen, the New York Mets right now are complete and utter failure and embarrassment and a disaster. 11 straight losses in April? This is about as dreadful as it gets. I am sorry. As bad as it gets. Who do I blame? Oh, I don't know. Everybody. Everybody for this baseball team. Why don't we start with Mendoza, okay? Because I feel like he has Art Howe vibes, where he has no answers for what's going on. Also, the 10th inning I thought was a complete and utter disgrace. Horner is the best hitter this year on the Cubs. First base is open. You cannot pitch to him with Kimbrel in that spot. It's not an option. I am screaming at the TV watching SNY yesterday, going absolutely nuts. How can you pitch to him? He is an unbelievable contact hitter. If he puts the ball in play, you're going to lose the game. Let anyone else beat you. And then post-game, you got Mendoza talking about the batters after him. You can't think about that. That made no sense. That is against every single fiber and fabric of how to manage a baseball team. That is amateur hour. I'll tell you what else was amateur hour. And it's funny. Again, and I have first guessed this, I don't have any kind of social media mentions from anyone who watches the show. You can't sign Devin Williams. And I've said this, and I'm a Yankees fan. The Yankee bullpen stinks. There's not been one moment this year where I've said, man, I miss Luke Weaver and I miss Devin Williams. And you know who should have known that Devin Williams was broken? The Mets. The Mets broke him with the Pete Alonso home run. What are we doing here? Made absolutely no sense. It was a weird, wild, irresponsible, just can't happen calculation. How does that happen? And the optics of Conforto getting it done in the ninth against Devin Williams? Come on. Just awful. What could go wrong goes wrong. Is it the manager? Is it the GM? Is it the owner? Is it the players? What have you seen during this 11-game losing streak for the Mets?
Well, nobody gets a gold star, but even yesterday, I think it was a mixed bag for Mendoza. He made the right move, starting Myers and then coming in with Peterson, held the Cubs down. Could you argue that they should have, even though it was a righty, Williams pitching to a lefty, Bush, that it would be better to pitch to Bush than Horner? I could see that case. I agree with Mendoza. He would have just stolen second. Could have been a messier situation. Williams doesn't throw a ton of strikes, even though he is a talented closer. You could argue that he made a mistake there, but that's not their number one issue. I think the mistakes, generally the big ones, were made above Mendoza at the front office level. I do think that generally the general managers have a bigger imprint on teams than managers do. And in this case, we're talking about a team that only has lost 11 games in a row. They've been outscored something like 62-20, something like 3-1. The other team has scored 3 times the number of runs. So right now, this is not look like a very talented team. Doesn't look like a well-constructed roster. And obviously the Soto injury, that's obviously a negative. But, all of the beliefs that they had early seem to be falling flat. That Semien would bounce back offensively, that Williams and Weaver would do better with the Mets than they did with the Yankees, that anybody, not that anybody could play in New York, but that the adjustment wasn't going to be this enormous. There just seems to be a lot of front office decisions that seem to be falling flat at this moment. And generally, the general manager has a bigger imprint on a team than the manager. And right now, I would say that David Stearns is the main culprit for what's gone on